Okay, good evening and welcome. I'm Charlie St. Amand, editor of the Sentinel and Enterprise. I welcome all of you to Leominster Public Library for this debate, co-sponsored by the Sentinel and Enterprise and Leominster Access Television. We thank LTV Executive Director Carl P. Marini and everyone at LTV with partnering with us on this debate, and to Leominster Library, of course, and Acting Director Ed Bergman for allowing us our use of these facilities on this night of civic engagement. Tonight we welcome 4 candidates seeking the 4 at-large seats on the Leominster City Council, as well as the 2 candidates for Ward 3 City Councilor. We have a great crowd here in person, and this program will be shown on LTV for the wider viewing public. I thank all of you for your interest in your local government, and I urge all of you to get out and vote in the election on Tuesday, November 7th. Our format tonight is as follows. For each question, the candidate will have 1 minute to respond. After each candidate has answered the question, there will be a 1-minute period for candidates to further discuss the topic among each other, i.e. debate a topic. Following the questions and answers in debate, each candidate will have the opportunity to deliver a 2-minute closing statement. Immediately following the council debate, a brief debate featuring the candidates for Ward 3 School Committee will begin. Our timer tonight is Cliff Clark, City Editor of the Sentinel and Enterprise. He is holding an electronic timer that will count down your time, and when it has expired, he will hold up the timer. Please, candidates, be respectful of the time constraints. However, as moderator, I will allow more if a topic is going really well, and I think that there's some more to be said on it, I'll allow it to go. Let me introduce our City Council candidates. Please note that although we have 6 candidates debating, there are 2 distinct contested races here. The first 4 candidates are the at-large candidates. They are, from your left, challenger Thomas Frank Ardinger, incumbent John Dombrowski, incumbent Claire Frieda, and challenger Brandon Robbins. And the 2 candidates at your far right are the Ward 3 Council candidates, incumbent David Cormier and challenger Gary Zimmerman. Although Councilor at Large Susan Chalafu Zephyr is on the at-large ballot, she is not actively campaigning for the seat. Instead, she is focused entirely on her run for State Senate. Thus, she declined to participate in this evening's debate. Candidates, thank you for your participation tonight. Let's begin. Question 1 goes to Frank Ardinger first. What could the City Council have done differently, if anything, to help prevent the school department's budget crisis this spring, which resulted in the layoff of 90 people in the department, including 36 teachers?
That's a very good question. First of all, I'd like to thank you for the Sentinel and Enterprise and LTV for hosting this debate. It gives us a chance to talk to the voters on a personal one-on-one basis, more or less. Regarding the council's, ability to control the school committee budget, or the school budget, we really don't. The council really does not have a whole lot of ability to control that budget. First of all, it's the school committee and the superintendent that work out the budget. They present it to the mayor. The mayor gives it to the council, and all the council can really do, unfortunately, all the council can really do is either vote for the budget as it stands or cut items. We cannot increase any appropriations whatsoever. The strong mayor type of government puts that power within the ability of the mayor. And what best thing we can do is be a vocal advocate for the school system, and I intend to do that.
Thank you. Councilor Dombrowski.
Yeah, I think a lot of what Mr. Ardinger said is accurate. Hindsight's 20/20. I suppose we could have had, more meetings, required the school committee to come down and give us quarterly updates of what their figures were. I think we found out about it, if I'm not mistaken, we found out about the shortfall maybe 60 days before the budget was due. So I think that now the council is currently pushing for a joint meeting with the school committee. And I think the best thing for us to do going forward is to have those regular meetings to ensure that if the school department is in a situation where they're going to be facing significant cuts, that we're in a position where we have a lot more time to react to it. Thank you.
Councilor.
Actually, there's truth in the statement. The City Council has absolutely no jurisdiction over the school committee. When I was on the school committee back in the 80s, there was a real frustration. The city was broke. There was really no money. The schools were suffering. It was before education reform, before net school spending. And councilors tried to tell school committee members all the time what they should do. We should do this, we should do that. And at that time, it was autonomous. So, you know, you had to give the school department, school committee what they wanted. And that was frustrating. The school committee is voted on by the people the same way the city council is voted in. And their jurisdiction is that school budget. I attend all school committee meetings. I've done it since I've been there for the past 30 years, pretty much. And I think that's the way to stay on top of it. I've had conversations with school committee members and lend my support.
Mr. Robbins.
Thank you. I have to also agree with a lot of what was said before me. There is a lot of truth in the fact that the City Council doesn't have any control over the school committee. But I do think it is important also, that was noted, to have some sort of communication between the City Council and the school committee. I think to make education a priority in Leominster, we need to have everybody on the same team on board. And if we expect you know, our goals to get achieved where we have a thriving school system, we need to ensure that the City Council is on board, the school committee is on board, and the mayor is on board. And without everybody on board, I'm not sure that it's going to happen that way.
Councilor Cormier.
Thank you very much, Charlie, and to you and the Sentinel and Enterprise and LTV for carrying this. I think it's very important to have a forum like this so that the voters can be informed of who's running for office. As far as the crisis that happened in the schools this summer, or the shortfall, you know, I fully am well aware that we do not have jurisdiction over the school's budget. But one of the things that I think we need to do as elected officials and community leaders is we need to encourage, and I've said this at the meeting, at the budget meeting, the budget hearings, we need to encourage a line item budget to come from the school committee. I think that needs to be put together, and we need to meet at least a couple of times a year to kind of understand, you know, how much money has been already spent, you know, that was originally allocated, and you know, and what we have, you know, left to spend for the remainder of the fiscal year. I think when you do that, you can sort of control and manage your spending and understand, you know, what you're spending your money on.
Mr. Zimmerman.
Well, it's a great advantage going last, because all I have to say is get out. I don't have to say anything, because they said most of it. My biggest thing, and it's ditto to everything that was said, because it's all the truth. It makes it difficult from the City Council standpoint. The one issue I have on this, and I don't have a clock going, so that's even better. I get to talk as long as I the one thing I have an issue with is the timing on everything. Everything was last minute. Same thing with the budget that comes from the mayor. I remember a couple of years ago, it came 2 days before July 1st. In the City Council, unless they get it earlier, again, I'm not a City Council member, I don't know if they get it earlier or not. How can you even look at the budget in between the schools or make a good decision on what's coming in front of you? If it's last minute and you're getting rushed to put it in. I remember the day I was in that budget meeting and John Richards said, you have to pass the budget, there's only 2 days left. I would have said no. I said, I need time to look at it and analyze it and say something about it. Granted, you'd have to go to the 1/12th, but sometimes if you don't have it by June 1st, then the City Councils can review the budget inside and out and make some decisions around that. Maybe that'll make things better and you wouldn't wait until the last minute to have things overrun into July and August.
And the council did not do that. Any more on this topic?
Yeah. If I may, you know, as far as the 1/12, you know, budget, I guess the city council, you know, we could have voted against the budget, made a statement, but at that point, 1/12 of the budget that the mayor submitted goes into effect on July 1. So what happens on July 1 when they're ready to expend line items for expenses like supplies for the schools, so you can start the school year? Even here at the library, I'm sure they have expense accounts that they're just waiting for July 1st to spend money. If you only have 1/12 of that money to spend, then what you're going to do is you're going to cause, you're basically going to cause the city to spend more money on these supplies because you're not buying them in bulk. You know, I'm sure that when they buy school supplies, the more you buy in bulk, the more you save. So, you know, you're just, you're creating more chaos. You're trying to solve chaos with chaos.
Councilor Frida, did you have a point?
Yeah, I was just going to point out, even though we talk about line items, once the budget is set, the superintendent has control of how that money is spent. School committee doesn't even have the authority to intervene. It's done ahead of time, so it's kind of important to have the schedule out and people being able to comment on what their priorities are, with the school committee to listen to those people. And as far as communication, if the school committee feels that that's their job and they want to have full control, they don't need to talk to us. It would be nice for everybody to have a conversation, but it's got to be both sides. And I think it sometimes gets difficult to do that.
Okay, we're going to move on to question 2 unless...
Yeah, I'd just like to make a couple comments. Number one, you know, to address Mr. Cormier's you know, discussion about the 1/12 budget, it would have been absolutely insane, I think, to put the school department or any department on a 1/12 budget. Can you imagine, just for a second, telling your classroom that, hey, 1 out of 12 of you are going to get a textbook this, you know, this month. Next month we'll get another 12, you know, textbooks, and it just would not work. And the other issue is, I sit on the board of a couple nonprofit organizations, and I know month to month we review the budget, the profit and loss, and the balance sheet, and I cannot understand how we can all of a sudden, at the last minute, come up with a $500,000 shortfall and not know about it beforehand. Somebody was asleep at the switch, and I don't think it was the city council's responsibility. I'm going to, you know, possibly throw the school committee under the budget, under the bus, because they should have been aware of that well before the end of the fiscal year.
Okay, we're going to move on to question 2, and that's posed first to Councilor Dombrowski. Councilor, over 250 streets that are, quote, not accepted, unquote, in the city are currently being reviewed by a select committee of the City Council to be accepted. That panel has identified 26 most in need of acceptance. While adding streets will mean an increase in the state's annual appropriation for road repairs of about $1.1 million, it could put currently accepted streets farther down the list to receive repairs. Do you think that's fair?
I mean, I suppose it depends on where you live. Bottom line, right? The reality is that it is part of a formula, and you're not going to get any increases in that formula if you don't submit additional streets as accepted streets. The other reality is, even though they're not accepted streets per se, the city is still doing quite a bit of maintenance to them. They're still plowing them. They're still taking care of them in some regard. So if that's the case, you might as well get them accepted and get them on the and get them as part of the formula, so that in the long term you can benefit. Is that going to really affect streets that need repairs? I'm not quite sure, because I think what the committee is doing is they're targeting those streets that should be accepted, but however, there's a few minor items that need to get taken care of for them to be accepted.
Councilor Frida.
That's kind of a tough question because I think it really needs to be looked at closely. I don't think we should be picking up as a city, picking up developers' shortfalls. And as a real estate appraiser, one of the first questions I have to look at, one of the first things I have to look at when I do an appraisal is if it's on an accepted street. Banks want to know if they're on accepted streets. Developers very often, and it's changed since the 80s. The 80s was a horrible situation with everybody building because there was a boom and financing was great, and that's what led to all this problem. But I do think if you look at some of the streets that need to be done, as Councilman Dabrowski mentioned, if it's something minor that can make that street acceptable, that's fine. The Chapter 90 money isn't going to increase that much just because we're fixing these streets. Still subject to legislative approval on that money. There's no magic formula that says you're going to get X amount of dollars every year. Depends on what they budget for Chapter 90 money. I mean, on the state level, I argue about that all the time.
Okay, Challenger Robbins.
Thank you. I think it's not a good thing to say that one street is more important than the other, because that can lead to issues. But I do agree with the fact that if we're doing work on these streets already, we should be seeing some sort of return for them. You know, if the city workers are taking time out of their day to fix these problems, and the city is having to foot the bill, where there is an avenue with the Chapter 90 money to see some sort of benefit from it by adding these streets on it, I really think that that's something we should look into.
Councilor Cormier.
Thank you. You know, I think, you know, these 20 some odd streets that we've identified, these are streets that were never intended to be private roads. You know, for example, we have, you know, the Lake Samoset district, and that is all private. That was always, it's part of an association. It was intended to be that way. These streets that we've identified were just abandoned. And, you know, I think someone could ask the question, you know, do you think it's fair that we pay the same amount of taxes as people that live on an accepted street? Because they don't get, people that live on an unaccepted street don't get a discount for living on an unaccepted street, except they are not eligible for Chapter 90 funds to have their road paved. So I think, you know, that everybody deserves to sort of, you know, everybody who lives on a street that is unaccepted, that wasn't intended to be that way, certainly deserves to be put into a queue, you know, to have their roads repaved. And, you know, I don't think we should be sort of picking one over the other. Everybody should be eligible for funding in that pot of money.
Challenger Zimmerman.
Yeah, I feel bad for the residents of those streets. Again, paying taxes for years and years and years, and their roads get into a bad shape, and then they find out it's not even an accepted road. You know, was it the city, or was it the developer, or a combination of the both? I think I attended one of the meetings. I think they said they have the whole process fixed in this situation, and hopefully they do, because it shouldn't happen again. Whether it's the bonds, or where the bonds are being held, or how you can better work with that. And it gets down to the accountability and making sure the city really follows up on these developments, because we know the contractors are going to want to come in and get out and make as much money as they can. So I really feel bad. They pay the same taxes that everybody else, and to find this out, I mean, again, the city's going to absorb the cost, I think, behind it. And again, the taxpayers will foot the bill.
Challenger Hardinger.
You asked the question, is it fair? And I would have to comment that it may not be fair, but it's necessary, because as everybody has said, you know, the people that are living on those undeveloped streets didn't, you know, understand probably when they bought the house that what was happening. They thought the streets were going to be accepted by the city. Whoever fault it is, you know, it's too late to point fingers. The bottom line is they pay taxes, they're living on those streets should be maintained. The city is expending money already, and why not get them on the books and keep that money, or keep that whatever small increase it may be for Chapter 90, but, you know, have that money coming back to the city every year, instead of, you know, the people, you know, paying out of pocket to have their streets paved. Councilor Cormier, you know, mentioned Lake Samoset. Well, I live on Lake Samoset, And we had to repair our main roads a few years ago, and it pretty much shot our whole budget that we had saved for years and years and years, and eventually because we had sold some real estate out there. But the bottom line is, they should get the same service that anybody else does in the city on their streets.
Thank you. I'm going to suspend the extra minute because we're already running long. So I'm going to go right to question 3, which goes to Councilor Frieda first. Now that the former Plastics Museum at 210 Lancaster Street is no longer viewed as a potential site for the new Leominster Police Station, what would you suggest as a new use for the building, and where might you, what is your preferred place, if you have one, for the new station, the new police station?
That's 2 questions, right?
Two questions that could be quickly answered.
Well, certainly the Plastics Museum has a use. There's a lot of money that was put into that building. It's a sound building. Could it have been a police station? I think we made the decision that we decided not to use it. Could have been used as one. But we have a school that's a center for excellence that could certainly move into that school. Have part of it used as an art section of the school. There are other innovation ways that could be used in the school system for that school. There are a number of different sites. I've been sitting on the police station site selection committee for 22 years. So I could name you a lot of sites that we've talked about. Any one of them would fit. What we need to have is somebody come forward and say, I want to build a police station. And then we can find the site. So.
Challenger Robbins.
You know, I think Councilor Frieda brings up some really good points about moving LCE into that building because, you know, it's there, we've already paid for it, might as well get some use out of it. If not, I think it would be beneficial also to the city to maybe, you know, see if we can recover some of the money we spent on that building to, you know, spend on the new police station that we're gonna inevitably have to build. In regards to location, I really think that keeping it in the downtown area would be really beneficial. Honestly, in my opinion, I think the Lancaster Street building was kind of a stretch for a police station. It was very far away and kind of in a remote location next to a school. So I really think that keeping it somewhere in that downtown area would be beneficial for everyone.
Councilor.
Thank you, Charlie. I'll tell you, if you keep asking all these questions, I'm not going to have to give my closing remark because these are all things that I'm going to talk about in my closing remark, actually. The former Plastics Museum, it was my 3rd meeting as a city councilor. I was the only person that voted against buying that building. I never thought it was going to ever make a good police station. There was no plan, and there still isn't, and that's been 8 years now. As far as what we should do with the building, I think we should surplus it. We should see if we have, you know, if the school department has a use for it, and if not, then maybe we should find a private partnership that, you know, would want to take over the building and put it back on the tax rolls. As far as a new police station, you know, I think that we should keep it in the downtown area, and I know that there's a few places that we talked about, you know, in executive session already with the mayor, but I do think it should stay in the downtown area because it needs to be accessible to people that might not have the means of accessing it if it was, you know, on the edge of town.
Mr. Zimmerman.
Yeah, the old Plastic Museum, I think there was a talk from the school committee or the superintendent about merging 2 schools. The advantage of that, because if you merge 2 schools, you can get rid of, and again, you don't want to see anyone laid off, but there's a chance to put more money into the schools. If you merge 2 together, there's a principal you don't need, a nurse you don't need, a cafeteria you don't need. But also the problem with that is, what's the cost of renovation? So you got to weigh out both sides of that. Is it just write this thing off because there's so much you have to do to it to get it in shape to be a school? So again, without knowing some details around that, I would, until I had all the details, just scrap it at this point, maybe even sell it, because it's not sure if there can be much use for that. As far as the police station, as I said in one of the budget meetings, If we save $200,000 to $500,000 a year in free cash, for as many times as we talked about this, we could pay cash for this police station. I look at it is, again, I look at the cost. Having it downtown, we're only privy to, I look at having the outskirts in the transfer station. It would save probably $4 million in demo and land purchases.
Mr. Arbinger.
What was the question again? As far as the police station goes, my personal opinion is the ideal location would be right where it exists right now. Unfortunately, the logistics of doing that would be impossible. So we have to keep it in the downtown area. I spoke to a property owner recently, and he's got a site that would be ideal for it. I don't know if it's on the list or not, but it would be an ideal site close to the downtown area. And while we're doing that, I think replacing the police station is one thing, but if we look at what a lot of the surrounding towns have been doing, they've been doing a what do you call it? Fire and police station combination in one public safety building. And if we were able to do that, because the fire station also is pretty old and it has a lot of problems with it. So I think we have to move forward on the police station. The library budget is, the library loan, I guess, is becoming due. So it's going to free up some bond capacity, and let's get it going.
Councilor.
As far as the old plastics museum, which used to be a school, I think what I would propose doing is probably seeing the CTE school, if it was feasible to move there. That school was started as a pilot program, and I think the superintendent, I know he gets a lot of flack, but I think he had some good ideas with that school, in the sense that if it does grow, it's an opportunity for the city to make money because of school choice. Other communities are going to want to take advantage of that. They'll send their students to us, and if that school is capable of that, of handling all that, then we can move that, because where it is now, we're renting, and if it grows, are we going to pay more rent? And I agree, the police station needs to be downtown. I keep it in a downtown location. I know in executive session there's several downtown locations that have been considered, and I would tear the old police station down to replicate any parking that may be lost for building the new police station downtown. Thank
Any
you.
more on this?
I just want to comment on Councilor Cormier's statement about buying it. That wasn't a mistake for us to buy that building. We sold it to the Plastics Museum for $1. They invested over $1.5 million into it, plus or minus, and we bought it back for $600,000 or $700,000. So it was not a mistake. Whatever we could use it for. There's a school across the street. There's a church in the neighborhood. We were able to control what would go in there for the best interest of the community as well. It is a perfect site for the Center for Excellence, and I agree with Councilor Dabrowski. It's going to grow because there are students that need that service, and let the superintendent fix that up, let the school committee have control of that, and use it for that purpose.
Mr. Zimmerman.
Yeah, going back to the police station, and someone commented about having them together. Again, that's another reason why I look at the transfer station. There's 6 acres of land out there that can be utilized, and granted it's right near I-190, so there's good access to everywhere. As far as the police station, hopefully they're patrolling around the city, so it's not as needed in the center of town. And again, that is a good location, but if you want to merge two things together, is there enough land downtown? We're not privy in the executive session to know how many lots they're buying or not, but 6 acres of land is quite a bit. I know they need like 60 parking spaces just for the police, so it's a good amount of land to put.
All right.
Yeah, just as far as the old transfer station on Jungle Road, which Mr. Zimmerman has talked about, I think that land is worth premium money. The city is eventually going to get some really good money for that land when the right buyer comes along. So I think we're better off to hold out and turn that piece of land over to somebody private where we can get some good investment on it. And for probably half the money of what we're gonna sell that land for someday, we can buy a piece of land closer to town. Another point I wanna make is, that's one of the reasons why I voted against fixing the parking garage downtown. I think that was another 8-to-1 vote that I was against fixing that. I think we should have ripped that down and we should have built a new police station right there.
Okay, we're going to move on to our next question, which is posed first to Mr. Robbins. Last year, the City Council rejected Mayor Dean Mazzarella's request to hire a new police chief on his own without implementing the state civil service process. How do you stand on granting the mayor the power to appoint public safety department heads?
I think that's a great question. When thinking about this, because this was posed in the questions that were going to be published in the paper, it took me, a lot of research, and I think that when it came down to it, I think the best way is to keep it the way it is. The civil service law, they go through a lot of testing to really find the best person fit for the job, and I think that having it appointed by somebody who's taken that test and understands the requirements needed to do so is best.
Charlie, can you repeat that question, please, in the entirety?
Last year, the City Council rejected Mayor Dean Mazzarella's request to hire a new police chief on his own without using the state civil service process. How do you stand on granting the mayor the power to appoint public safety departments?
Well, I do think that the position needs to stay in civil service. I think, what happens is once you take it out of civil service, you run the risk of having it more political. This way here, you have somebody that has risen up through the ranks and that knows the ins and the outs of law enforcement, and that you have the right person to do the right job. So I wouldn't want to make any changes to that.
I'll just make this simple. I don't think the mayor should have any more control than he has. A lot more needs to be done outside of his realm, whether it's in city council or the civil service. So it's a simple question, it's a simple answer.
Mr. Ardinger.
I guess I want to stand a little bit on the outside of this question, because the civil service exams or any exams are great for determining a person's knowledge and stuff like that, but unfortunately it doesn't always test or prove their leadership capabilities. And when you're hiring someone to be a department head, you're the executive officer of the city, you're hiring someone to be a department head, you should get someone that not only has the knowledge, but also has the capability of being a good leader. And someone as critical as the police chief should have those leadership skills. Giving the mayor the power and the authority to hire the person that has those skills is a good thing, I think. Testing is a nice supplement to it, but I would give that power to the mayor.
Counselor.
I like Frank. But I couldn't disagree more. That's a position that it needs to be obtained on merit. And once it is obtained, that person needs to be free to do their job without someone looking over their shoulder all the time. It's really that simple. I think also as part of the civil service exam, there are tests or scenarios that they run that test the leadership component. But the bottom line is there's certain positions that need to be free to do their job without a subjective political force behind them. So I would tend to say that we got it right the first time.
Councilor Frito.
Yes, I agree. I like Frank too. But I also agree. It's a position that I firmly believe needs to stay in civil service. When we were discussing this, I brought people in from Boston, from both sides, so that we could hear the issues on both sides and make an educated decision. And one of the things that came up a couple times was the fact is you were still going to have a police force that was civil service. So there was a little bit of something that could become problematic by having a chief that was not civil service leading a patrol that was civil service. So that was a little bit contradictory as well. So I absolutely believe that it needs to stay in civil service, and politics needs to stay out of important decisions the chief has to make for his community.
Well, Frank, they like you, but you're the only one that you're the only one that thinks that.
I never said I liked them.
Well, I'm a type of person that if I have an opinion, I will state that opinion, and I guess damn the torpedoes.
Thank you. Question 5 goes to Councilor Cormier. The Massachusetts Medical Society has endorsed the idea of establishing a pilot program for medically supervised safe injection sites for those addicted to opioids. The group points to the decline in fatal overdoses in cities in Canada and Australia where the programs have run as a reason to try a pilot program. When we asked Fitchburg council candidates whether that city should consider hosting such a site, some suggested that Leominster would be a better place for such a pilot program. Do you agree?
No, I do not. I've heard of these such programs, and I know that there's some studies that have happened, but I just don't think we're ready for anything like that. I think I'd have to see a lot of really hard data before I could ever allow that to happen, in our community. So I do not, and maybe Fitchburg would be a better place for it.
Mr. Zimmerman.
I'll have to say the same thing. Pittsburgh would be a better place for it. Again, unless there's more data behind it, I wouldn't agree with it in the city of Leominster. Again, sometimes studies, one minute you turn around a hamburger's bad for you, the next minute you turn around and a hamburger's good for you. Who's doing the study? Who's collecting the data? So I think there'd have to be a lot more data behind it before you could agree to bring that into the city.
Mr. Ardinger.
I would certainly agree if it's going to happen, it should happen in some other city other than Leominster. I won't mention Pittsburgh by name, but the bottom line is, if you take and have safe injection sites, you're just enabling the people that are using heroin to continue their usage. We have to attack the opioid crisis on a broader scale than just giving people a place to inject safely. And we have to treat it as a holistic program with education, treatment, and then follow up to that treatment afterwards. We can't just say, okay, we know you have a problem, we're just going to give you a place to shoot up and keep on going. It's not going to solve the problem. Okay? It'll just exasperate the problem, as a matter of fact.
Councilor.
That's an interesting question. I'm not sure how I feel about it. In my line of work, I've dealt with the opioid issue a lot. And in fact, I had a federal court case. I think there were 20 co-defendants, all involved in illegally distributing Percocets. And they look a lot like everybody sitting in this room. Plumbers, electricians, contractors, carpenters. I think one of them was a lawyer. And it's a crazy thing we're dealing with. I had one client of mine who did die of an overdose, who tried very hard to beat the problem. And he described it to me as an itch that you just can't scratch. So I think we really need to, educate ourselves about that. There's always that fear factor, but we need to educate ourselves about that because it's a real big problem.
Councilor Freed.
Let me start off with saying I always liked Michael Hurley up until that comment was made. I've known Michael for years. And I know what he was saying, the place near the hospital was his primary objective. The numbers aren't in yet, the data's not in. I mean, it's really started in Canada. They say it's successful, but I think there's a long way to go before that we can actually see success in injection facilities. I would not support anything until it was absolutely proven, and I think it's going to be very difficult to do, that it successfully moves towards the drug addiction eradication.
Mr. Robbins.
I would have to agree. I don't think I would be able to support anything like that at this point either. Working at Ginny's Helping Hands, I work one-on-one with people struggling with addiction pretty much every single day, and I don't feel that giving them a place to go, you know, get an injection, whether it be a small, what they consider safe amount or not, it is the solution to that problem. I think we need to look at, you know, other avenues.
Any more on this topic? We're good? Terrific. Question 6 goes to Mr. Zimmerman. And candidates, all of you have been active in your city, whether as an elected official or as someone who has served your community in other ways. What has been your proudest accomplishment in the service of your city?
Well, I guess my proudest moment was at Fallbrook when I volunteered to create the Fallbrook Unplugged show to raise money for the schools, because again, they don't usually have a lot of money to spend on supplies and things. And it was always fun working with my daughter at that point and getting her on stage to do things. So that was probably my proudest moment starting then, because being in high tech, you travel a lot, you didn't get involved much, but after getting laid off, I was able to spend time at home and volunteer for the Fallbrook for a few years. So that was definitely my proudest moment, and creating the show and working with my daughter the whole time through that.
Thank you. Mr. Ardinger?
That's very difficult, because most of my volunteer work and civic work has always been in the background. I've never been a person to kind of put myself out front of the group. I tell everybody I'm a grunt. I just get the job done. And working with the Scouts, I've seen a lot of young men who have grown up and become parents, and now I've seen their grandchildren in Scouts. And seeing those kids grow up and become great, responsible adults, seeing their children do the same thing, and now seeing their grandchildren doing the same thing, I think is something I have to be proud of. Other organizations that I'm involved in, the veterans organizations, I enjoy working with the veterans. I've always enjoyed working and helping the veterans. And I think that we have a very active, supportive community for veterans in Leominster. I'm just proud to be part of that organization.
Thank you. Counselor?
Well, I coached minor league baseball on the Leominster American Little League. And I think one year I had, of my 11 kids, I had 7 or 8 7-year-olds. So I think my proudest moment was teaching those kids to hit. But seriously, we had a crisis, maybe 10 years ago with the drinking water. There was a certain contaminant that was present in the drinking water, and it was real and it was serious. And I thought that the city council spearheaded a lot of that action to get that remedied. And I think that we weren't afraid of it, and we tackled it, and we kept it at the forefront. And I think today we have some of the finest drinking water in the Commonwealth, and we have a state-of-the-art system. And myself and 8 other councilors played a big role in that. I was very proud of it.
Thank you. Councilor Freedom?
I actually have a couple that come to mind, probably equally among a few. And one of them was back in 1990, working to build the monument for the Vietnam veterans, which is long overdue. The second is working with my Rotary Club, introducing a couple of programs, fundraisers that still are successful now in raising money for music and arts in the Leominster school system to make up the deficit in the budget. And it's still going strong, both of them, thanks to the club. The third one is I introduced legislation. We were one of the first communities to have the senior rebate program, and I had a suite little lady that came to me and said, you know, it wasn't just bringing the program that my husband get into. He wouldn't get out of bed in the morning. Now he gets out, he puts a tie on and his shirt, goes downtown and he works in City Hall every day. And she said, you gave him more than just rebate on his taxes. You gave him a reason to socialize and be part of something.
Thank you. Mr. Robbins.
I would have to say that my proudest moment would be getting hired at Ginny's Helping Hands. Before getting hired there, I was a volunteer there. And, you know, it was one thing to be a volunteer. You don't get to see, you know, all of the aspects of what that organization does. And, you know, getting hired on as part of the team, I really found out what Ginny's does. And it's so amazing to me to be able to work one-on-one with these people who come from all over the city, you know, some from other, you know, towns in the state. Just, you know, just to help themselves get back on their feet, whether it's with food, clothing, whatever it is. It's nice to really have that one-on-one connection with them. And, you know, just the smile that you give them when they walk in through the door can make their day better.
Thank you. Councilor Cormier.
Thank you very much. You know, I think I've had a lot of proud moments, but one of them that really stands out was, it was several years back. There was a woman whose husband passed away, and he was a Korean War veteran. And I seen her around town, and I asked her how she was doing, and you know, she was very candid with me, and you know, told me that she was struggling. You know, it was tough to make ends meet. And so, you know, I knew that her husband, who had passed away, was in the, you know, in the Korean War. And so I asked her if she had spoken to Rick Votor to see if, you know, she was eligible as a widow, you know, for any benefits. And she said, you know, that she hadn't. So I asked her if she wanted me to speak, you know, to Rick Votor on her behalf. And so I did. She allowed me to, and I did. And Rick Votor discovered that she was entitled to some benefits that she didn't know that were coming to her. And you know, she is very, very grateful and really, really needed those benefits. So I kind of was her link with the Veteran Services to get her some much needed help, and that's something I'm very proud of.
Thank you. And thank you, candidates. That concludes the formal question and answer portion of our forum tonight. We will now close with the 2-minute closing statements from each candidate, beginning with Mr. Artinger.
Begin first, huh? Okay. As Mr. St. Omer said, my name is Thomas Artinger, although most people know me as Frank Artinger. I've been a resident of Leominster since 1974. I wasn't born and raised here, but I chose to move here because of a business opportunity. I've never regretted that decision. I've seen Leominster go through some bad times as well as some very good times. You know, Councilor Frieda mentioned the 80s. I can remember, as many people in the audience I think can, the double sessions at the high school, the portable classrooms, the sand not getting cleaned up from the streets until late June or sometime even into July. I can remember having to go to Fort Devens to get you know, equipment for the DPW because we couldn't afford it in the budget. And I want to make sure that we don't go back to those areas. If I'm elected to the City Council, I tell everybody I make them one promise, and that's if you contact me, you know, either call me or email me, I will get back to you and I will take ownership of whatever you give me. I won't make any promises that I'm going to solve all those problems, but I will take ownership and do what I can for you. The other thing I'd like to just add as you know, kind of a side note is when this decision came up to running for City Council at large, I wasn't 100% in favor of it. My wife was not 100% in favor of it, but I was approached by Councilor Jim Lanciani at an American Legion meeting, and he said, Frank, I want you to run, and if you run, I will support you. And everybody knows Councilor Lanciani. That is something that you just cannot, you know, take away or take lightly. It's a responsibility that I want to uphold for the councilor, and I want to serve as the councilor to replace him with the same type of attitude that Jim Lanciani had, and that is provide great constituent services to the people of Leominster.
Thank you. Councilor Dombrowski.
Thank you. I think most of you know me. I've been around for a bit. John Dombrowski. I like to thank the Sentinel and LATV. I'd like to thank everybody for coming out. And I'd like to, thank my fellow candidates. It's difficult to run for office. It's difficult to put yourself out there. It takes some courage, and I commend everybody up here for doing that. I think as a voter, you have to ask yourself what a candidate is bringing to the table. I've been around Cliff, that's not calling you.
Got a minute left.
No problem. I think you got to ask yourself, what a candidate brings to the table. My record speaks for itself. I've been on the council for about 14 years, and I think I've been a straight shooter. I think I've been reasonable, and I think I've cast every vote with the best interests of the city in my mind. I've got a wealth of experience, not only educationally and as an attorney, but I have a business in town. I have children who live in this town, who've been educated in this town, who are now either in college or in the process of going through college, of applying to college. So my fears and my worries are the same as many of yours. So it's been an honor to serve, and if you vote for me, I appreciate that. Thank you.
Councilor Frieda.
Thank you, Charlie. Thank you to the Sentinel and everyone for coming tonight. I love this city. I love being a cheerleader for this city. I'm presently the longest serving elected official in the city. My 6 years on the school committee, I would probably still be there if it weren't for the fact that I went to ed reform. I love the days when we had teachers sit in front of us, say why they wanted to teach our children. And when ed reform was going to change that to school-based management, I really felt that I could be more effective in protecting the school committee and the school system and our students by being on the city council. I like to think that there's a form of protection, or at least acknowledgement for some of the issues that come before us that affect our communities. I've been serving on the Mass Municipal Association in Boston on my own time 2 or 3 times a month. I served as the president of that organization in 2000. That's enabled me to sit with other councilors, mayors, elected officials throughout the state and be able to take things back to our city. We were the first city to be a Purple Heart city, to tell our veterans how much we care about them. I brought the senior rebate program into the city so that our seniors could work off some of their taxes. I brought zoning for adult entertainment because it would have come here if we did protect our areas so that we wouldn't have any adult stores anywhere near our schools or anywhere where our children were going to see them, or our churches or places of worship. I like to think I do a good job. I'm responsive. I go to all the planning board meetings. I go to the zoning board meetings. I go to the city council meetings, because I don't think you can separate it. To be a good counselor, I think you have to do it all. And you have to know how one connects to the other to make this community a good community.
Thank you. Mr. Robbins.
Thank you. So first I would like to thank the Sentinel and Enterprise, LTV, and the Public Library for hosting tonight's debate. Also to all of you in the audience and everyone at home for tuning in and being interested, and for your continued support. And finally, I'd like to thank all of my fellow candidates for participating in tonight's debate. My interest in local politics really started when I was in high school, when I had the unique opportunity to work with a teacher on a project that was regarding the local elections at the time. Because of that, I started attending city council meetings, the subcommittee meetings, budgetary meetings, school committee meetings, and began studying the interworkings of how Leominster, the municipal system in Leominster worked. Unfortunately, no, that wasn't enough to understand the issues that people in Leominster were facing. So that's when I started volunteering at Jenny's Helping Hands, where I later became a member of their team. As a volunteer, I really learned about the generosity that Leominster people had, and the willingness they had to take time out of their day to help people who were struggling. When I was hired on, like I said before, I was put in a position where I had the opportunity to work one-on-one with people who had struggles and were trying their best to make ends meet. So with that in mind, at the age of 22, I feel that I have the fresh perspective and positive energy needed to tackle the issues that the city are facing as a member of the Leominster City Council. Therefore, I ask for your vote on November 7th. Thank you.
Thank you. Councilor Cormier.
Thank you to all the voters, of Ward 3. I've spent the last 8 years of my life working on your behalf. I had the support of the City Council to be Vice President in 2013 and 2014. I was Chairman of Finance in 2015, and then again I had the support of the City Council to be elected President in 2016 and 2017. I have worked hard to reach my goal of fostering an atmosphere of civility and mutual respect as Council President. And for those who watch our meetings on TV or in person, I believe that I have accomplished that goal. Since being in office, I have fought for Chapter 90 money for road improvements to be spent in Ward 3. I believe that nearly every dime of Leominster's portion of the additional $200 million Governor Baker released to cities and towns in 2015 was actually spent on roads in Ward 3. Not to mention how much was done in other years. Roads such as Iris Road, Clubhouse Drive, Argentine Street, parts of Willard Street, South Street, Crown Street, Tisdale Street, Litchfield Street, and currently Weathervane Drive. And the list goes on and the work continues. I recently worked with the mayor to get Crabtree Lane, which is unaccepted road, paved by the developer. At my third meeting as a city councilor in 2010, I was the only councilor that voted against purchasing the Plastics Museum on Lancaster Street to be used as a police station. It ultimately was purchased by a majority vote of the City Council and is still not a police station, which I believe demonstrates how doing your homework and thinking ahead are important qualities of an elected official. I am still fighting to have a new police station built, as I believe that the officers who work in the building deserve better and the taxpayers should not be wasting money on putting Band-Aids on the existing building we have now on Church Street that has very inefficient operating expenses. Last year there were proposals before the City Council to have medical marijuana facilities located in our city. At a City Council meeting held in August of 2016, the City Council voted to table the petitions. I, as well as 2 other councilors, led the charge to untable those petitions and give the petitioners an answer as to whether or not they would be coming into our city to do business. After all, it is what the voters voted for, and it will also bring much needed revenue into our city, which will benefit our schools, especially sports. Okay. Our efforts were successful. The City Council went along with it. We still have much more work to do in this ward. I am working on getting unaccepted streets accepted. This would make many streets in Ward 3 eligible for Chapter 90 money to get streets like Duggan Drive, Comstock Road, Glenwood Drive, Birchcroft Road paved, to name a few. There also is going to be a project on Route 12 through the heart of Ward 3, similar to the project on Mechanic Street, and I intend on seeing it through to make sure the residents and businesses get the best results out of the project and that it goes as smoothly as possible. I just got one more quick sentence. I have been very responsive to my constituents. I answered emails and returned phone calls. I hope to continue my work that I have started to make the city of Leominster the best place to live, work, and raise a family, and I respectfully ask for your vote on Tuesday, November 7th, 2017. Thank you very much, Charlie.
Thank you. Mr. Zimmerman.
I don't have time to thank anybody because I want to fit. I'm running for Ward 3 City Council because I want to try to make a change. Think about this. Is anyone really fighting for a taxpayer? Does our government realize where the revenues come from? If they did, so much could change where all the revenue... Does our government realize where all the revenue comes from? If they did, so much could change at all levels of government to free up money. I want to make a change. And if not, at the very least, keep the taxpayers informed. I feel there should be more accountability and transparency from our public officials. The tax rate went from $11.25 to $19.73 in 10 years. That's a 75% increase since 2008. The budget went from $98 million to $121 million, which is a 23% increase. There needs to be better balance between spending and what is taken from the taxpayer. Can the fire department figure a way to reduce overtime, which is over $1 million a year? Should vehicles be brought home outside of the Leominster city limits? Was it cost effective to move the LCE school out of the high school at a cost of over $600,000? Would the $2.4 million being spent for early retirement health care in the school department right now be better spent in hiring new teachers? Would more parking meters downtown help raise money to help revenue? If elected, I will analyze everything and ask a lot of questions to make sure things are justifiable and in the best interest of the taxpayer and what is best for Leominster. If elected for Ward 3 City Council, I will fight for the taxpayer as best I can. I hope you get out November 7th and vote. Make a change. Vote Zimmerman, Ward 3 City Council. Thank you.
Thank you, and thank you, candidates. Thank you to all of you who attended tonight at Leominster Public Library and to those watching at home and online. We hope you have learned something new about the candidates this evening and hope you will make your voices heard at the polls on Tuesday, November 7th. Please show your appreciation for the candidates tonight. And we will now take a short break to set up for a short debate between the Ward 3 School Committee candidates. Hello and welcome to a debate between the two candidates on the ballot for School Committee in Ward 3 in the November 7th municipal election. My name is Charlie St. Amand, editor of the Sentinel and Enterprise, and we are coming to you tonight from Leominster Public Library in a debate co-sponsored by the Sentinel and Enterprise and Leominster Access Television. Again, I want to thank LTV Executive Director Carl P. Marini and everyone at LTV, and Acting Library Director Ed Bergman and the staff here for allowing use of this wonderful building in this community room. We hope this debate not only informs the public about this race, but also encourages voters to head to the polls on November 7th. I welcome the candidates for Ward 3 School Committee and thank them for participating. On your left is challenger Isabel Alera. And on your right is challenger Joshua Klaus. Our format is simple. I will ask a question and each candidate will have up to 1 minute to respond. Then the candidates will have an additional minute to rebut or debate the question between each other. At the end of the questions and answers, each candidate will make a 2-minute closing statement. And we're doing this in alphabetical order, so Ms. Alera gets the first question first, and then we'll have Mr. Klaus do the second question first, and so forth, and then we'll alternate. Our timekeeper is City Editor Cliff Clark, Sentinel and Enterprise City Editor, who is displaying a digital reading counting down the time. He will raise his hand when time has elapsed. Let's begin the questions and answers. We will start with Ms. Alera. What could members of the school department and school committee have done differently to prevent this year's budget crisis from happening?
Thank you. What I have to say towards that is I think the line item budget being open to the public could have helped a lot, because then you have public coming out in public forum asking where is the money being spent. And the superintendent also could not come up with his line item budget. So the line item budget was a very big issue, as well as everything was last minute. They couldn't come up with a decision. It was a lot of arguing and bickering, mainly because they did want what was best for the students, but it was too last minute. And then you are scrambling to save jobs, you're scrambling to save class sizes, you're scrambling to save custodians and transportation. And unfortunately, all of that got nixed. So I think they could have done more when it came to time.
Mr. Klaus?
Same question?
Yes.
Thank you. I'd like to take the opportunity to thank the Sentinel and LTV for offering the candidates for Ward 3 School Committee an opportunity to discuss the issues about the schools. This past year we saw how significant this issue was, and we've even seen it trickle into the City Council debate earlier tonight. So the question was differences that we could have seen, what they could have done. The first thing I can say is start the process earlier and more transparent. The committee members, from what I understand, needed more information. They didn't really get it. The community was looking for more information. They weren't really getting it, so I agree with Ms. Alera on that. Also, we also saw the school committee for the first time really ever, and I thought it was irresponsible of them as a whole, not one particular person, that they really shot over that net school spending minimum line significantly. We're talking millions and millions of dollars, not by like 1% or 5%. They shot over that issue. And lastly, we need a line item budget, which they didn't get.
Anything more on this topic? Yes.
I'd like to continue what I was saying in regards to the net school spending, so the community out there understands. There is a minimum that we are forced to fund. What the school committee did this past year was they voted and passed a budget 8-0 for a budget that was millions over that, not being taken consideration the possible conflicts that creates. We need to see more on an effort on the state level of changing the funding formula. There are avenues, whether it's cannabis revenues or the fair share amendment that might happen in the future. Those are ways we can do it. And if those things pass or those revenues are there, then I can say, you know, let's look at what our wants are for the schools and then advocate and pursue those funds. But I thought...
Anything more?
Yeah, I would like to add that my opponent had said in a recent article that he thought local businesses would be able to donate to the school department, but I do not see that being foreseeable at all in the future. I don't believe local businesses are going to take their hard-earned revenue and spend it on something that the city should be taking care of. I'd also like to say that there isn't enough being voted on or known about the cannabis industry and when it's coming to Leominster and all of the medical marijuana. So that is probably not going to be a possibility in terms of revenue for the school system. So I think what we need to do now is look at the state's formula, and we need to look at net school spending, because we're not making net school spending. We are at 1/10 of 1%, and that is not enough. So net school spending, I understand that they did propose a huge budget, but now we're only at 1/10 of 1% of net school spending, and that's not enough either.
One last point.
One last point, about 10 seconds. I want to make it vividly clear. We don't know what's going to happen with the revenues from the cannabis thing that's been organized and the commission in place, nor do we know if the fair share amendment is going to pass. I hope it does. My point is, right now, locally, we can't go and force, with a strong hand, more monies to come from municipalities. We've seen the priorities with the mayor. And secondly, my job as a representative from Ward 3 would be to advocate for those monies from the state and changing the formula.
Okay, we're going to go to question 2, and that goes first to Mr. Klaus. If elected, you will very likely be involved in selecting a new superintendent. What qualifications would you look for in an ideal candidate, and would you prefer to hire someone internally?
Yes, I'd like to see someone be hired internally from our district. If we don't have that talent, then someone that's preferably 5-10 miles around this area. I want to kind of bring this job back home. When I served on the school committee back in 2004-2005, our superintendent, Marilyn Fraterelli, may she rest in peace, she was a really good superintendent. She came here, she was homegrown. teacher, an administrator, and then her way up to superintendent. I think it's time that we come back and look for that talent here. And I'm pretty sure that's possible. I wouldn't advocate for someone out of the district right now.
Ms. Alera.
Thank you. I, again, would have to go with someone who has local ties. I think that is incredibly important. We've seen with the current superintendent who lives, I believe, in Marlborough. He's from Marlborough. Even when it comes down to calls about snow days or things like that, we have rain. And we could easily go to school, and that is a day wasted and a day added in June. I mean, I know teachers want summer vacation just as early as the students. So, I mean, if it's snowing in Marlborough and it's raining here, we could get to school. I mean, safety does come first, but I would like to see someone locally. I think that would be very helpful in terms of communication between staff, between students, and I believe it would be very helpful with communication between not just the school committee, but also with city council, as well as the mayor's office.
Anything more on this topic, candidates?
Yes. I'd like to see someone locally, in addition to having some local ties, whether they're being a teacher or administrative, to have some sort of financial experience. I think that would be crucial. And someone that can show respect more to parents and school committee members. There's been a lack of transparency and disrespect, I would call it, with committee members. And that's not how you work together. People should be working together. Ms. Fratarelli worked great, I thought, with myself and other committee members. Again, I think we need to go back to a homegrown relationship.
Ms. Alera, final point?
My final point would have to be, we did hire someone who we thought had financial experience, and look at where we're at right now. So I think that needs to be very closely looked at, not just, oh, he definitely has financial experience, let's hire him on the books. It needs to be someone who has the qualifications that can be met, and someone who, and then the teachers say, oh, we have no faith in him and his contract gets extended. So it needs to be someone with financial responsibility across the board.
Okay, we're going to go right to question 3, and it is posed first to Ms. Alera. As you campaign for this office, what are the residents of Ward 3 identifying as the most important issues, and what do you tell them you will do about them?
So I have heard 2 main issues. The first one is communication, and the second one is transparency. I have definitely heard a lot on taxes, but that isn't their main concern with the school committee. So when it comes to communication, my whole point is I would like to see more joint meetings between the school committee and the city council. I know there have been some in the past, but they, in my opinion, were far too late in the game. Just so everyone is on the same page and we can all move forward together, I would also like to see the mayor attending those meetings. I would also, along the lines of transparency, I don't think they are necessarily trying to make it come across as secretive in what they're communicating, but I think it would be great. I mean, the internet is a great tool, Facebook, all of those things for residents. However, then things get nasty, but I think it's a great way to communicate to the residents more efficiently.
Thank you, Mr. Klaus.
Thank you. I will agree with Ms. Alera that residents have noticed the mayor's absence last year. Whether or not he gets elected, we hope that that won't be a problem after January. Honestly, when you're running for school committee or city council, regardless, taxpayers are taxpayers, and they have brought up taxes, probably to both of us. We don't have much to say to that. However, 65 to 70% of these taxpayer dollars go to schools, and that's why it is being brought up. So when people are concerned about their taxes going up, they're also concerned to see or to hear of the problems going on with our budget and what's going on with the teachers and what's going on with the janitors. So it's been quite fun and interesting to run for this position during this unique time. Last point I want to bring up is people want to access their representative. So I can commit that I'm fully accessible. My phone number, my email, through Facebook, whichever, feel free to get in touch with me.
Anything more?
I would also just like to add that I am fully accessible. I have my phone number on my Facebook page, my address on my Facebook page, my email address on my Facebook page, so you can get in contact with me however you'd like. And I am always on the other line.
Can I ask you quickly, do voters reach you by email and online with questions and comments?
Oh, yeah.
Interestingly enough, less emails, more, and I don't know how my phone is, more through social media.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I think that's more easier in the palm of people's hands than their email.
Yeah, I'm getting a lot of questions through Facebook Messenger, whether it be my personal Facebook page or my campaign Facebook page, and I feel like that's their easiest way to get in contact with me for some reason, but I do have all of my other forms of communication up there as well.
All right, thank you. Our final question goes to Josh Klaus. Senator Michael Rush of West Roxbury has filed a bill seeking a suspension of MCAS testing statewide for 3 years. Is such a break a good or bad idea, and why?
Very simply, great idea, and let me tell you why. We have had over a decade now, going on to 2 decades or more, of the MCAS original test. With them reshaping this, teachers are being forced to teach to a test. They're going to have to go through the processes to get used to it again. My bigger concern are for the students. We have seen students with increased mental health issues, suicidal thoughts, anxiety. Life as we all experience it in our personal lives is already stressful as it is. I do not look forward to this new shape of MCAS. I want to get back to letting teachers teach and letting kids learn, because I feel the best education for my son, who is in the audience tonight, who does go to Francis Drake, and he does great, is educating the whole child.
Ms. Alera.
Thank you. I think this is a fantastic idea. We do have great teachers in this district, but I do feel as though they are somewhat teaching for the test instead of teaching the whole entire student. But along the lines of that, I was recently able to take the MCAS exam to graduate high school because I am 19. And that test, let me tell you, is stressful. Not as stressful as the SAT, but really stressful because it counts for your graduation requirements. I was also part of the class that had to take the PARCC exam experimentally. That was not fun. So I think it would lower the stress of the students, lower the stress of the teachers, and it would overall produce a better and well-rounded student, in my opinion.
I'd like to add to that. Here's a good example. My opponent was just a recent student. She can speak from experience. The anxiety and the stress it causes our children, and she has seen our teachers today have that same anxiety and stress for multiple different reasons. Now, I myself in 1998 was the first class to be taking the MCAS test. Incredible amount of stress back then. It was not a requirement for me to graduate, to have passed. I did pass it, both times I had to take it. It was just terrible back then. I can't imagine any more restrictions on our teachers and students today. Thanks for that question.
I just would also like to add I'm grateful for that test because I got a tuition scholarship for college. So, I mean, it has some benefits, but I would say that there is more negative effects than positive effects.
Okay, we have time for one more question, and that's to Mr. Klaus, I believe, first. And I will ask you the same question I asked of the City Council candidates tonight. What has been your proudest accomplishment in the service of your city?
Thank you for that question. I am going to take a moment and an opportunity to address a question that was asked at the City Council because my answer that I have for you is more simple. You asked about the Plastic Museum, and the schools was brought into this because possibly get rid of the Plastic Museum or sell it, or maybe the schools are interested. I would hope that the school department's interested, and let me tell you why. LCE right now has a low student population, however they may grow, so it's a possibility LCE could use this building. I'd also be interested to see if the school department would take this building, that we might look into a kindergarten / preschool type of building. We have 2 other aging buildings in the community that I'm concerned about. And to get into your question, my most proudest moment would definitely have to be being in Boy Scouts, being a Boy Scout leader, and just seeing how my son and other kids do, in, like I said, shaping the whole child. And I've enjoyed being a leader, and I've enjoyed contributing to that organization over the years.
Thank you. Ms. Valero.
Thank you. Having a mother who is an educator is a great way to become a volunteer. And so she has recently taken up the opportunity to teach summer school for kindergartners. And that's not your average summer school stereotype that you think of high school students who failed a class and now have to take it. It's for kids who have special needs and kids who need to continue their routine. And so being able to go in there and see the different types of students and their learning disabilities, but how much they grow throughout the whole entire summer and how they're ready for first grade is really, really awesome. And I would just like to say that the whole entire summer school staff, especially those at Francis Drake, do an amazing job with their students. They have a great time. They actually love coming to school every day, even though it's from 8 to 12. They get to go home and swim in the pool afterwards, but they learn so much. The team is amazing, and I've loved working with all those kids.
Thank you. We're now moving on to the 2-minute closing statements, and we begin with Ms. Valero.
Sure. All right. So first of all, I would like to thank the Sentinel and Enterprise, as well as LTV and the Leominster Public Library for this opportunity. I would also like to say that I wish that the other candidates and challengers could have been here tonight. I realized there was a scheduling conflict with the executive session meeting that is at Jim Jolliker's office right now, Superintendent Jolliker's office. So Ronnie and Nona could not attend, but I would have wished that everyone could have made it tonight so you could all hear their opinions as well. I would like to also address that I believe my age is a huge asset. I know a lot of critics have said that it's a downfall. I'm 19. I graduated 2 years ago, so I know what the students need. I have great relationships with the staff. I have great relationships with the students, and they feel very, very comfortable coming to me and voicing their concerns. And that's something that I can relay thoroughly in those committee meetings. I would also like to add, my opponent speaks a lot on experience, and that is his main platform. But in my opinion, one term does not equate experience. You are learning a lot. Every single term you serve, every single day you step into those committee meetings. And quite frankly, one term isn't it. I would also like to say that he's run many unsuccessful campaigns, and so I, again, don't believe that equates experience. I would like to say that this has been a great opportunity, win or lose. I've got to make many, many friends, meet many, many great people. I've listened to many great residents, and I've been listening to their concerns. I will voice their concerns. I will be the champion for their children. I'm a new vision, I'm a new voice, and I'm the right choice. So I humbly ask for your vote November 7th. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Klaus.
Thank you. I'd like to again thank you and the Sentinel Enterprise and LTV for hosting this quick debate between myself and my opponent. I'd like to first start off by addressing something my opponent has brought up. Age is not a downfall, especially here in Leominster. I was elected at 21, the youngest elected on the school committee at large. And we've seen candidates over the years for school committee or city council that are youthful. I also ran unsuccessfully for councilor at large in 2009. What my opponent won't tell you, she'll make you to figure it out yourself, is my mother was diagnosed with a terminal condition of cirrhosis and later passed on. And for those of you that know my mother and I, we were very close, but that took a lot of energy out of me to care for her. And most recently unsuccessful for state rep. Very simply, suspended the campaign because if you don't have the money or the finances backing you for such a position, don't keep pushing for it. As far as experience goes, yes, my platform is experience, but it's not because I was one term on the school committee. However, that is a lot of experience when you think about it and what you do. I'm talking about the experience I had when I went to college. I'm talking about the experience I had going to college for business, being the director of operations for a small business out of Worcester, having a family, raising my son, dedicating my time to him. And yes, I've been on campaigns for myself. I've helped campaigns. I've helped some of you in this room on your campaigns. That's the experience I'm talking about. It's not all weighted onto the school committee in my one term. However, I do want to bring up, I'm running because I'm a concerned parent. And I want to make sure someone with experience this time is well represented in Ward 3. My opponent, unfortunately, has a direct conflict of interest if you talk to the State Ethics Commission. Not another school committee member, not your parents, not other people's opinions. You cannot vote, Ms. Alera, on teachers. You cannot have conversations in the room discussing teachers. And the contracts are coming up this next year. And I want to focus on hiring a new superintendent. I want to focus on helping manage the budget and working with the city council when we're invited to have those discussions, set our priorities straight. Because when schools succeed, communities succeed. And I ask anyone watching or here tonight, please consider, and I would appreciate your vote on November 7th.
Thank you, Mr. Klaus. Thank you, candidates. Please show your appreciation for our two candidates. This concludes the debate of the two Ward 3 school committee candidates in Leominster, and we hope registered voters make their voices heard at the polls on Tuesday, November 7th. Good night.